Be me, Mac, 30-something data analyst. My job is my life, but not in a sad way. I just genuinely enjoy it. There's a purity to numbers. They don't lie, they don't have feelings, they don't have a political agenda. 2 plus 2 is always 4. It doesn't care if you're happy or sad about it. My whole world is built on logic, efficiency, and finding the signal in the noise. I work for a big tech company. The pay is good, the work is challenging. For years, my department was an oasis of sanity in a desert of corporate nonsense. The reason for this was our department head, Harry. Harry is an old-school guy, probably in his late 50s. He came up through the ranks back when competence was the only thing that mattered. His management philosophy was simple: hire smart people, give them the tools they need, and get out of their way. He never cared about what you did outside of work. He didn't care about your personal life. He didn't care about office politics. All he cared about was results. Did you meet your deadlines? Was your analysis accurate? Did your work make the company money? If the answer to all three was yes, you were golden. Our team meetings were a thing of beauty. 10 minutes, tops. Mac, status on the projection model? On track. Should be ready for testing by EOD Thursday. Good. Hannah, how's the data pipeline integration coming along? Hit a small snag with an API, but I have a workaround. No delay. Excellent. Anyone have any blockers? Silence. All right, get back to it. That was it. No fluff. No motivational quotes. No forced fun. It was perfect. We were the most productive department in the entire company, and it wasn't even close. We were a well-oiled machine. Then, our manager, the guy directly under Harry, took a job at another company. We were all a bit worried about who they'd bring in to replace him. Harry sent out an email assuring us he'd find someone who fit our results-oriented culture. We trusted him. That was our first mistake. A few weeks later, the announcement came. Our new manager was named Kira. Her bio in the introductory email was a collection of buzzwords: passionate about fostering synergistic growth and dedicated to building psychologically safe environments. There was a lot of talk about empowerment and holistic team development. There was almost no mention of data analytics, project management, or technical skills. MFW.jpg. Still, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just good at corporate speak. The first team meeting was scheduled for a full hour. That was the first red flag. We all filed into the conference room. Harry was there to do the official handoff. He kept it brief, as always. Everyone, this is Kira. Kira, this is the team. They're the best in the business. Don't break them. Then he left. Kira stood up, beaming a smile that looked like it was powered by a car battery. Thank you, Harry. Hello, team. I am just so incredibly excited to begin this journey with all of you. She then spent the next 45 minutes talking about herself. Not her professional experience, mind you. Her feelings. She told us about her philosophy of management, which seemed to be based entirely on making sure everyone felt heard and validated. She said that her number one priority wasn't project delivery, but creating a culture of belonging. I just sat there, my soul slowly leaking out of my body. I looked over at Hannah, a senior analyst who was just as no-nonsense as I was. She was staring at Kira with the blank expression of a soldier who's seen too much. The meeting ended with our first piece of homework. Kira sent out a follow-up email. Team, as our first step toward fostering a more inclusive environment, I'm asking everyone to please add their preferred pronouns to their email signatures by the end of the day. Thanks for being allies. I stared at the email. My signature was simple: Mac, Senior Data Analyst, extension. 1234. What was the point of adding pronouns? My name is Mac. It's not an ambiguous name. In thousands of emails, not once had anyone been confused. It was redundant information, inefficient, Clutter. I archived the email and went back to debugging a SQL query. I figured it was a suggestion, not an order. The next day, I noticed everyone else had complied. Their signatures were now bloated with he/him, she/her. One of the junior guys even had he/they. I ignored it. I had a deadline. Later that afternoon, I got a chat message from Kira. "Hey Mac, just a friendly reminder about the email signatures." I replied, "Noted." And then I continued to not do it. It wasn't about making a statement. It was about practicality. My brain is wired to eliminate unnecessary steps. This was an unnecessary step. The week continued, and Kira's presence began to change the very fabric of our department. Our 10-minute stand-ups were replaced with 30-minute check-ins. She'd ask us to rate our emotional bandwidth for the day on a scale of 1 to 5. Most of us just mumbled, 4, I guess, to get it over with. Then came the circle of trust. She booked a recurring 1-hour meeting every Friday afternoon. The title was Team Connect. We all went into the conference room. She had arranged the chairs in a circle. Ono.wav. She started by saying she wanted us to go around and share something we were struggling with, personally or professionally, and one thing we were grateful for. It was like some kind of corporate therapy session. The first few people gave sanitized, HR-approved answers. "I'm struggling to balance my workload, but I'm grateful for my supportive colleagues. I'm feeling a little burnout, but I'm grateful for the weekend." It was excruciating. Then it was my turn. I looked at Kira. She was leaning forward, her eyes wide with anticipation. Project X is on schedule. The preliminary model shows a 15% efficiency gain. We're waiting on the final data set from the sales team. I have no blockers. The room was silent. Kira's smile tightened. "Thank you for the update, Mac, but the exercise was about sharing our feelings. What are you struggling with on a personal level?" I just stared at her. "My personal struggles are private. They don't affect my work. But this is a safe space, Mac. We can't build trust if we're not willing to be vulnerable. My work is the source of my professional trust. The code is clean, the analysis is accurate, and the deadlines are met. That's all the trust you need from me." Her eyes started to twitch a little. "And what are you grateful for?" she asked. Her voice strained. "I'm grateful for efficient meetings." The silence that followed was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. Hannah coughed to hide a laugh. Kira quickly moved on to the next person, but the damage was done. I hadn't been aggressive. I hadn't been rude. I had simply refused to play the game, and she couldn't stand it. After that meeting, I became her special project. She started scheduling one-on-one meetings with me twice a week. The agenda was always the same: checking in. In the first one, she brought up the email signature again. She explained that while I might not need to clarify my pronouns, my refusal to add them created an environment where others might not feel comfortable sharing their pronouns. It was a microaggression, she said. I asked her a simple question. Has any employee in this department or any other filed a complaint or expressed any confusion or discomfort related to my email signature? She stammered for a second. "Well, no, not directly, but then it's a hypothetical problem. I solve actual problems. Let me know when this becomes one." The conversation moved on to my communication style. She said I was overly direct, and that my focus on purely data-driven points could be intimidating to people who are more feelings-oriented. She suggested I try to soften my language. Instead of saying, "That conclusion is incorrect because the data doesn't support it," I should try something like, "I appreciate the perspective you're bringing, but I'm wondering if we've considered how the data might tell a different story." I told her that was inefficient and introduced ambiguity into a process that required precision. It was like trying to explain color to a person born blind. We were operating on two completely different wavelengths. She saw the workplace as a social club that occasionally did work. I saw it as a place of work that was occasionally social. This went on for weeks. The department's productivity started to dip. The constant meetings, the emotional check-ins, the new initiatives she kept rolling out, they were all distractions. People were spending more time managing Kira's feelings than doing their jobs. I just kept my head down and worked. I made sure my output was higher than ever. I knew she couldn't touch me as long as my numbers were flawless. My work was my shield. The next major incident happened in a big cross-departmental meeting. We were presenting our quarterly findings to the heads of marketing and sales. Harry was there. It was a big deal. Kira was leading the presentation. The slides were prepared by the team, mostly by me and Hannah, but Kira was the one talking. It was clear she didn't fully understand the nuances of the data. She was good at delivering a slick presentation, but when people started asking specific questions, she floundered. She got to a slide about customer churn rates. The slide showed a projected churn of 2.7% for the next quarter. She started talking about how this was a positive trend and how our retention strategies were working. I felt a cold pit in my stomach. I knew the data. I had built that model. There was a typo on the slide, a misplaced decimal point. The actual projection was 7.2%, not 2.7%. It wasn't a positive trend. It was an alarming one. The number was supposed to be a wake-up call, not a reason to celebrate. I had a choice. I could stay quiet, let her present the wrong number, and watch the fallout when marketing and sales based their entire quarterly budget on faulty data. It would be her mistake, not mine. Or I could speak up, correct the record, and maintain the integrity of my department's work. But it would mean publicly embarrassing my new boss in front of other department heads. My professionalism won out. I couldn't let bad data go unchallenged. I waited for her to pause for a breath. "Excuse me, Kira," I said, my voice calm and level. "Just a point of clarification on that slide for everyone here." All eyes turned to me. "There appears to be a typo in the deck. The correct projected churn is 7.2%, not 2.7. The raw data is in the appendix if anyone needs to verify." You could hear a pin drop. The head of sales immediately started frowning. 7.2? That's a huge difference. That changes everything. Harry looked from the screen to me, then back to the screen. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. He knew I wouldn't speak up unless it was critical. Kira just froze. Her face went from pale to bright red in about 3 seconds. She tried to recover. "Ah, yes, thank you for that. Clarification, Mac. As I was saying, we are closely monitoring But the momentum was lost. The rest of the meeting was spent grilling us on the real number and what we planned to do about it. Her entire narrative had been shattered by 1 decimal point. I knew there would be consequences. As soon as the meeting was over and the other department heads had left, she turned on me. She didn't yell. That wasn't her style. She used a low, trembling voice, as if she were the victim of a great injustice. "I cannot believe you did that," she said, just loud enough for the rest of our team to hear as we packed up our laptops. "Did what?" I asked, genuinely confused. "You deliberately humiliated me. You completely undermined my authority in front of the entire leadership team." I was baffled. There was a critical error in the data being presented. My job is to ensure the accuracy of our analysis. I did my job. "Your job?" she hissed. "You could have told me privately. You could have sent me a chat, but you chose to make a public spectacle. You couldn't stand to see a woman in a position of authority, so you had to put her in her place. Classic toxic masculinity." I just looked at her. The accusation was so absurd, so far removed from the logical reality of the situation, that I didn't even know how to respond. It wasn't about her being a woman. It wasn't about her authority. It was about a number on a slide. 7.2 is not 2.7. It's that simple. I didn't have to say anything, though. Hannah, who had been quietly putting her notebook in her bag, spoke up. "He saved your ass, Kira," she said, her voice flat, "and ours. If we had let sales and marketing run with that 2.7% number, we'd all be in a meeting with Harry's boss trying to explain why the company is about to miss its quarterly forecast by a mile. Mac did the right thing." Kira looked like she'd been slapped. She stared at Hannah, then at me. She saw no support in our faces, just cold, hard facts. She snatched her laptop, turned, and stormed out of the conference room without another word. I packed my bag in silence. Hannah gave me a quick nod as we left. Nothing more needed to be said. A line had been drawn, but I knew it wasn't over. People like Kira don't accept logical defeats. They just reframe the battle on an emotional battlefield where they can't lose. She couldn't attack my work, so she was attacking my character. And I had a sinking feeling she was about to escalate things significantly. Over the next couple of weeks, the atmosphere in the office became thick with tension. Kira barely spoke to me or Hannah. She managed the team through emails and group chats. Her one-on-ones with me were canceled without explanation. But she was busy. I saw her having hushed conversations with the more pliable members of the team, the junior analysts who were too scared to push back. She was always typing furiously after they spoke, no doubt adding to some kind of secret document. She was building a case, a narrative. I wasn't just a difficult employee. I was a problem, a toxic influence, a threat to the safe space she was trying to build. I didn't care. I just continued to do my work. I closed out 3 major projects, all ahead of schedule. I helped other departments solve complex data issues. I was creating undeniable value. I was making it impossible for them to get rid of me on the basis of performance. I knew the final confrontation was coming. It was just a matter of when and how. It came in the form of a calendar invitation. Meeting with Harry. The attendees were Harry, Kira, and me. The subject was performance and team culture. Thisissit.gif. I knew this was her endgame. She was going over my head. She was going to try and convince the one person who mattered that I was the cancer in the department. She was about to try and fight a war of feelings against a man who only cared about facts. She had no idea what she was walking into. I spent the night before the meeting preparing, not in the way Kira would. I didn't write down my feelings or practice my talking points in the mirror. I compiled data. I went through my work logs for the past 6 months. I pulled every project I had completed. I quantified the impact of each one: money saved, efficiency gained, revenue generated. I printed out my performance metrics: productivity, accuracy, timeliness. All of them were at 99th percentile for the company. I gathered the email chains from other departments, the ones where VPs and directors were praising my work. "Mac is a lifesaver," one read. "We couldn't have launched without his analysis," said another. I wasn't building a defense. I was building a fortress of pure, undeniable competence. She could bring all the feelings and buzzwords she wanted. I was bringing receipts. I walked into Harry's office the next afternoon. It was a corner office, big and sterile, with a large mahogany desk. Harry wasn't a man for personal decorations. The only things on his wall were company awards and a framed chart of the stock price's upward trajectory. Kira was already there, sitting in one of the 2 chairs in front of the desk. She was clutching a leather-bound notebook to her chest, like it was a holy text. Her face was set in an expression of grim determination. She looked like a martyr heading to the stake. I sat down in the other chair. I placed my slim folder on my lap and waited. I didn't look at her. I looked at Harry. Harry leaned back in his chair, templed his fingers, and got straight to the point. "Kira has requested this meeting," he said, his voice a low rumble. "She has expressed some serious concerns about the team's culture, and specifically your role in it, Mac. I want to hear what's going on." He turned his gaze to Kira. "The floor is yours." This was the moment she had been waiting for. She took a deep breath, opened her notebook, and launched her attack. It was a masterpiece of corporate doublespeak, a 40-minute monologue that was completely devoid of any concrete facts. She never accused me of doing anything wrong, not really. Instead, she spoke of the vibe in the office. She said I had a dismissive energy that made it difficult for others to be their authentic selves. She talked about my refusal to participate in team-building exercises, framing it not as a personal preference, but as a deliberate act of social sabotage. She brought up my overtly logical communication style, claiming it created a hostile environment for neurodivergent thinkers and those with different processing styles. She mentioned the pronoun incident, describing my quiet refusal as an act that invalidated the identities of my colleagues. The presentation in the conference room was her star exhibit. She painted the picture of a calculated, cruel takedown. I hadn't corrected an error. I had engaged in a public power play designed to emasculate her and reassert a patriarchal hierarchy. It was a truly breathtaking performance. She used every buzzword in the HR dictionary: psychological safety, microaggression, weaponized incompetence, unconscious bias. She was building a narrative in which I was the villain, not because of what I did, but because of what I represented. I was the old way of thinking, the unfeeling, logic-obsessed machine standing in the way of her enlightened, feelings-first utopia. She ended her speech with a flourish, her voice cracking with emotion. "It's not about any single incident, Harry. It's about a pattern of behavior, a pattern that is making it impossible for me to build the kind of cohesive, supportive, and innovative team that I was hired to create. People are afraid to speak up. The creativity is being stifled. And Mac is the source of that fear." She closed her notebook and looked at Harry, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She had just laid out her entire case. Harry sat there, his expression unreadable. He let the silence hang in the air for a long moment. Then he turned his head slowly and looked at me. "Mac, your response?" I didn't say a word. I leaned forward, opened my folder, and placed a single sheet of paper on Harry's desk. It was a one-page executive summary. On the left side, a list of every project I had completed since Kira started as manager. On the right side, the quantified business impact of each project. At the bottom, in bold, was the total value I had generated for the company in that time. It was a 7-figure number. Harry picked up the paper. His eyes scanned it from top to bottom. Kira craned her neck to see what it was. Her expression shifted from righteous indignation to confusion. This wasn't part of her script. I then placed a second stack of papers on the desk. "These are unsolicited emails of commendation from directors in sales, marketing, and operations regarding my work over the same period," I said calmly. Harry glanced at the top few pages. Finally, I placed a third, much thinner document on the pile. It was a chart, a simple line graph. "And this," I said, "is the department's overall productivity metric. The x-axis is time. The y-axis is tasks completed per employee per week. This vertical red line is the date Kira was hired." The line on the graph was stable and high for months. Then, at the red line, it began a steady, undeniable decline. The data was speaking for itself. I didn't need to add any commentary. Harry stared at the graph for a long time. The only sound in the room was the quiet hum of the air conditioning. Kira was starting to look pale. She was realizing her emotional narrative was being systematically dismantled by cold, hard data. "I was hired to be a senior data analyst," I said, my voice still quiet and even. "My performance is measured by the accuracy of my analysis and my contribution to the company's bottom line. These documents are my performance review. I have met or exceeded every expectation set for my role. I paused, then looked directly at Harry. I have never been rude to Kira. I have never refused a direct order related to a work task. I have never missed a deadline. The accusations being made are not about my work. They are about my personality and my refusal to engage in activities that I believe are a waste of company time and resources. I leaned back in my chair. That is my response. Checkmate. Harry looked at Kira. Her whole demeanor had changed. The righteous fire was gone, replaced by a flickering panic. Kira, Harry said, his voice dangerously soft. Mac's work is, by every conceivable metric, exemplary. He is arguably the most valuable individual contributor in this entire department. The team's overall output, however, has been declining for the past 2 months. He tapped the line graph. How do you explain this discrepancy? She stammered. Well, it takes time to implement a new culture. There is an adjustment period. People are spending more time connecting and building trust, which will lead to long-term gains. Harry cut her off, not unkindly, but with a finality that was absolute. Your job is to enable people like Mac, not to fix them. His communication style is what produces these results. He gestured to my folder. Your focus on feelings is producing these results. He tapped the graph again. Then came the killing blow. Harry picked up his desk phone. He pushed a button. Janet, could you get Hannah on the line for me, please? Kira's eyes went wide with terror. A moment later, Hannah's voice came through the speakerphone, tinny and professional. Yes, Harry? Hannah, you've been on the team for 5 years. I have one question for you, and I want a straight answer. Is Mac a disruptive presence in the department? Does he create a toxic environment? There was a short pause. I could almost hear Hannah weighing her options. She could give a politically safe, non-committal answer, or she could tell the truth. She chose the truth. No, Harry, she said, her voice clear and firm. Mac is the reason half our projects get done on time. He's quiet. He keeps to himself. But when you need help with a technical problem, he's the first one to offer it. He's probably the least toxic person in the office. Another pause. The only tension in our department right now, Hannah continued, is the pressure to spend half our day talking about our feelings instead of doing our jobs. Harry didn't even flinch. Thank you, Hannah. That's all I needed. He hung up the phone. He looked at Kira. It wasn't a look of anger. It was a look of profound disappointment. Kira, he said, his voice flat, this company values results. Your mission here was to take the most productive department in this company and make it even better. Instead, you have tried to turn it into a social experiment, and, in the process, you have alienated your top performers and driven down productivity. He stood up, signaling the meeting was over. I don't want to hear another word about team culture, psychological safety, or microaggressions. Not from you, not from anyone. Your one and only job, from this moment forward, is to get that productivity number back up to where it was. Focus on the work. Is that understood? Kira just sat there, frozen. She looked small and defeated. All she could do was whisper, Yes, Harry. Good, he said. Now, both of you, get out of my office. You're wasting my time. We walked out of the office in silence. Kira wouldn't look at me. She scurried back to her desk like a frightened animal. I walked back to my own desk, sat down, and resumed my work. But I knew something had fundamentally shifted. It wasn't just a meeting. It was a verdict. And news in an office travels faster than light. By the next morning, everyone knew. No one knew the exact details, but they knew the outcome. Kira had gone after Mac, and she had lost, spectacularly. The change in the team's dynamic was immediate and brutal. Her authority, which was already tenuous, completely evaporated. People stopped pretending. When she tried to start the morning emotional check-in, people just ignored her and started talking about their work. When she sent out an invitation for a Friday Fun Day virtual trivia game, not a single person RSVP'd. Her emails about synergy and empowerment went unanswered. People's interactions with her became surgically precise. They would ask her for the specific information they needed to do their jobs and nothing more. There was no small talk, no "how's your weekend?" no pleasantries. She was a ghost at the head of the table. She would run meetings, but the real conversations would happen in side chats and private channels that she wasn't a part of. It was a quiet, bloodless coup. The team had silently decided that she was irrelevant, and they were simply going to work around her. She had tried to create an inclusive environment by force, and, in her failure, she had made herself the ultimate outsider. She was being excluded, not by any official policy, but by the collective, unspoken will of the people she was supposed to be managing. She tried to fight it for a while. She tried to reassert her authority by setting up mandatory one-on-ones. People would accept the invitation, show up, give one-word answers to her questions, and leave the second the meeting was over. It was a role reversal of the most ironic kind. She had accused me of creating a hostile environment through my silence. Now, she was experiencing what a truly hostile environment felt like, the crushing weight of collective indifference. The panic started to set in. She looked perpetually exhausted. Her forced smile was gone, replaced by a constant look of anxiety. She started making simple mistakes in her own work, forgetting to approve requests, missing important emails. Her own performance was cratering under the stress of her self-imposed isolation. She had built her entire professional identity around the idea of being a social architect, a master of human connection. But she had been rejected by the very people she was meant to connect. The final nail in the coffin was about a month after the meeting with Harry. She tried one last time. She called a team meeting and gave an impassioned speech about needing to rebuild trust and come together as a team. When she finished, there was just silence. No one clapped. No one spoke. People just stared at their laptops. She looked around the room, her eyes pleading. Nothing. The meeting ended 10 minutes early. That was Friday. On Monday morning, there was an email from Harry in our inboxes. Team, please be advised that Kira has decided to pursue other opportunities. Her last day was Friday. We wish her the best in her future endeavors. She was gone. She didn't even say goodbye. She had just packed up her desk after that final humiliating meeting and vanished. A quiet sense of relief washed over the department. That afternoon, Harry walked into our area. He looked at us. Listen up. We're going back to the old way. 10-minute stand-ups, no more circles, no more check-ins, just work. Any questions? No one had any. Later that day, I was at the coffee machine when Hannah came up beside me. She poured herself a cup and leaned against the counter. So, she said, a small smile playing on her lips. Things are quiet again. I took a sip of my coffee. For the first time since this whole thing started, I actually felt a genuine, unforced smile spread across my own face. Yeah, I said, quiet is good. And it was. We went back to being a well-oiled machine. Our productivity shot back up. The noise was gone. All that was left was the signal. It was perfect.